You've seen it roar down highways. You've seen it fly past Smokey with a trail of dust. But the 1977 Pontiac Trans Am holds secrets that even superfans don't know. The 1977 Pontiac Trans Am isn't just a muscle car. It's a legend. With its bold gold bird on the hood and a growl that could shake the streets, this car turned heads everywhere it went. But behind the shiny paint and Hollywood fame are stories most people have never heard. From movie stunts to hidden features, factory quirks to auction shockers, these are the hidden secrets that make the Trans Am truly one of a kind. Number 1. The 77 Trans Am wasn't that fast or powerful. You've seen it in movies. You've seen it on posters. The black and gold 1977 Pontiac Trans Am, roaring down highways with its Firebird on the hood, looked like the king of the road. It had style. It had attitude. But here's the part no one tells you. It wasn't actually that fast. Let's go back to the 1970s. America loved muscle cars, big engines. But in the middle of the decade, everything changed. In 1973 and 1974, something called the OPEC oil embargo hit the United States. Gas stations ran dry. People waited in long lines just to fill up. Suddenly, cars that guzzled gas were out. Everyone wanted smaller, lighter, fuel-saving cars. The muscle car era started to fade. And there was more. In 1970, a new law came in, the Clean Air Act. It said all cars had to cut their pollution in half by 1975. To meet those rules, car makers had to make big changes. One major change was putting something called a catalytic converter into every car, starting in 1975. This device cleaned up the car's exhaust, but it also forced engines to burn cleaner fuel, called unleaded fuel. That might sound like a good thing, and for the planet it was. But for engine power, not so much. Engines ran differently with unleaded fuel. To make them work, automakers had to lower something called the compression ratio. That meant less power. Suddenly, big V8 engines weren't making the roar they used to. And that brings us back to the 1977 Trans Am. Under the hood, it still had a giant engine. Its strongest version came with a 400 cubic inch V8. Sounds scary, right? But in truth, this mighty-looking engine only made 200 horsepower and 325 pound-feet of torque. That might sound like a lot, but it was much weaker than the engines from just a few years earlier. To be specific, the same size engine in the 1970 Trans Am made a shocking 345 horsepower and 430 pound-feet of torque. That's a huge drop. The 70 version was a rocket. It could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.4 seconds. And down a quarter-mile track, it hit the finish in just 13.9 seconds. Now compare that to the 1977 version. The newer car needed 7.7 seconds just to hit 60, and the quarter mile, a flat 16 seconds. In the world of muscle cars, that's not blazing fast. It's barely warm. Even the base engine in the 1977 Trans Am wasn't impressive. It was still a 400 cubic inch V8, but it only made 180 horsepower. And if you lived in California, you got something different altogether. Strict rules there meant drivers got a 403 cubic inch V8. It sounded bigger, but it only made 185 horsepower. It's not exactly the thunder you'd expect from a Trans Am. So, while the 1977 Trans Am looked mean with its shaker hood and T-top roof, the performance didn't match the attitude. The numbers prove it. It was a car built during a time when power had to be sacrificed for fuel and clean air. Number 2, there were several special editions of the 1977 Trans Am. The 1977 Pontiac Trans Am, a black car with golden stripes, sped across the movie screen, jumping over bridges, racing past police cars, and stealing the hearts of millions. It was the Pontiac Trans Am, and thanks to the movie Smokey and the Bandit, that car became a legend. But here's what most people don't know. The car in that movie wasn't just any Trans Am. It was a special edition, and it wasn't the only one. That year, Pontiac made several different versions of the Trans Am that looked cooler, had unique parts, and cost more money. This was a time when muscle cars were fading away, but Pontiac kept things exciting by giving buyers something extra. Let's rewind just a bit. The black and gold paint job that became world famous, that actually started in 1976, the year Pontiac celebrated its 50th anniversary. A famous designer named Bill Mitchell came up with the look. It was called the Special Edition Package, black body, gold pinstripes, golden snowflake wheels, gold grille. Even the inside had gold details, like a gold-colored dash and a gold-accented steering wheel. People had never seen anything like it. In 1977, Pontiac brought this special edition look back and made it even better. But here's the twist. There wasn't just one version. There were two. One was called the Y81. That one had the same black and gold design, but with a solid hardtop roof. The other was called the Y82. It came with something super cool, T-top glass roof panels, called Hearst hatches. These were glass panels you could pop off to let the sun in. They looked awesome, but they leaked when it rained. Still, most people didn't care. Now, here's a number that might surprise you. Only 748 people bought the Y81 version with the hardtop roof, but more than 6,000 buyers paid an extra $1,143 for the Y82 version with the T-tops. That would be like spending almost $6,000 extra today just for a fancier roof and some golden touches. And then came the W72 Performance Package. That was a different option some people added to their special edition Trans Ams. It gave the car a high-output 400 cubic inch V8 engine and a 4-speed manual transmission. In fact, it was the only way to get a stick shift in a 1977 Trans Am. 6,459 people picked this option. And even though Pontiac said this engine made 200 horsepower, the National Hot Rod Association tested it and said it was actually closer to 260 horsepower. Car makers often said engines were weaker than they really were, so they could avoid problems with insurance companies and government rules. Now, let's talk about the engines. Buyers of the special edition could choose from 3 different V8 engines. The first was the L80 Oldsmobile 403 cubic inch V8. This was mostly used in California and places with high mountains. It made 185 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque. The second engine was the L78 Pontiac 400 with 180 horsepower and 325 pound-feet of torque. And if you wanted a bit more power, the W72 engine was the way to go. It had the same engine size, but made 200 horsepower and the same torque. Car and Driver magazine tested one of these W72 Trans Ams in April 1977. It went from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 9.3 seconds. It ran the quarter mile in 16.9 seconds, going 82 miles per hour at the end. By today's standards, that's not very fast. A modern 4-cylinder Toyota Camry can do better, but back then, it still felt like you were flying, especially with the T-tops off and the gold bird on the hood. The special edition became so famous that even collectors wanted it. One of the cars used to promote Smokey and the Bandit, owned by Universal Studios and Burt Reynolds, was sold at an auction in 2016 for $550,000. That was the most ever paid for a 1977 Trans Am. But the best stories don't come from movie sets. They come from real people, like Larry Reimer from Omaha, Nebraska. He was just a teenager in 1976 when he saw a special edition Trans Am in a car magazine. It was love at first sight. His dad helped him buy one a year later, with a custom vinyl interior, air conditioning, cruise control, and the W72 package. It cost $6,950. It didn't even have a radio, but Larry didn't care. He added his own stereo later. He babied that car, only driving it on dry days, and even entered it in car shows. Years later, his Trans Am still looked brand new. It even scored 389 points out of 400 at a national car show. The only trouble? Those leaky Hearst T-tops. Larry says they were replaced a few times, and one big rainstorm reminded him just how bad they really leaked. But he still wouldn't trade that car for anything. So now you know the secret. The 1977 Trans Am didn't just come in one style. It came in multiple special editions, each with its own rare features and powerful engine options. Number 3, Smokey and the Bandit boosted Trans Am sales. In the summer of 1977, a wild movie called Smokey and the Bandit hit theaters across America. It wasn't just a funny, action-packed film. It was a game changer for the car world. One car in particular stole the spotlight, the black and gold 1977 Pontiac Trans Am. Before the movie came out, the Trans Am was already a pretty cool car. In 1976, Pontiac sold just under 47,000 of them. That was decent. But once the movie hit the screen, something big happened. That shiny Trans Am became a superstar, and sales exploded. By 1979, Pontiac was selling more than 117,000 Trans Ams. That's nearly 3 times more than just a few years before. It wasn't just a car anymore. It was a dream on wheels. And that dream started with one movie. The story followed a smooth-talking driver named Bandit Darville, played by actor Burt Reynoldss. He wasn't just running from the law, he was racing across the South with a mission, some bootleg beer and a runaway bride. But as fun as the story was, the car was what fans couldn't stop talking about. General Motors, the company that built Pontiac cars, gave the movie's director 4 brand new Trans Ams to use in the movie. With every screeching turn, every wild stunt, and every narrow escape, that black Trans Am became more famous. It looked fast, it sounded mean, and most of all, it felt like freedom. The car had a 400 cubic inch V8 engine and was part of the special edition model. It came with shiny gold stripes, bold lettering, and a giant Firebird decal on the hood. That bold look helped make the car stand out, and after the movie came out, everybody wanted one. Soon, car dealerships across the country were filling their front lots with black Trans Ams. Even people who didn't care about cars before suddenly wanted one. One salesman said his whole row of Trans Ams sold fast because of the movie. The car had become a symbol of cool. The fans didn't just want a Trans Am, they wanted to be part of the Bandit's wild ride. They wanted to feel the power of that V8 engine, wear the sunglasses, and drive like a movie star. Experts today still talk about how much the movie helped the Trans Am. A top car insurance company said the film is one of the biggest reasons late 70s Trans Ams are so popular now. They even gave the era a nickname, the Smokey and the Bandit era. Back in the late 1970s, a top-of-the-line Trans Am Special Edition might cost about $7,000. But now, that same car in perfect condition is worth around $76,000. That's more than triple the price of the top Chevrolet Camaro Z28 from the same year. All of that came from one movie, one car, and one wild ride across the South. And for fans all over America, it was the Bandit's car. Number 4, jumping the Malberry Bridge. One of the most jaw-dropping scenes in Smokey and the Bandit is when the black Trans Am flies through the air and clears a broken-down bridge. It looks fast, smooth, and heroic on screen. But behind the scenes, that stunt was real, and it almost destroyed the car. Back in 1977, filmmakers didn't have computer graphics. If you wanted to show a car jumping, you had to actually jump the car. And that's exactly what they did with the famous Malberry Bridge scene. The bridge was broken, so the Bandit had to leap across with nothing but speed and air. That scene wasn't just movie magic, it was real danger. The crew used 4 Pontiac Trans Ams during the making of the movie. All 4 were badly damaged by the time filming was over. The one that did the Malberry Bridge jump took the hardest hit. After flying through the air, it was nearly destroyed. In fact, it was so broken that the crew called it all but totaled. It never drove again after that scene. Now here's the wild part. The Trans Am wasn't just sent flying with normal power. Even though the car had a big V8 engine and lots of torque, it still needed help to make that huge leap. Some reports say the stunt team added a booster rocket, the same kind used by Evel Knievel during his failed Snake River Canyon jump. That rocket gave the car a big push, helping it fly farther than any regular car could on its own. But not everyone agrees on the rocket story. The movie's director, Hal Needham, said something different. He claimed the car was sent to a NASCAR garage where it got a supercharged engine with 700 horsepower and a manual transmission. That gave the Trans Am all the power it needed for liftoff. Either way, whether it was rocket power or race car muscle, that jump was real. And it was dangerous. Hal Needham, who used to be a real stuntman, didn't ask anyone else to do it. He got behind the wheel himself. Sitting next to him was Lattice Street, Edmund, who stood in for Sally Field during the scene. Together, they launched that car off the edge of the broken Malberry Bridge and into movie history. The car flew, but it didn't land softly. When it hit the ground, the front smashed down hard. The frame bent, the body crumpled. Hal Needham later joked that the car looked like a camel afterward, with a big hump in the middle. That Trans Am was never going to drive again. After the jump, the team had to keep the movie going, but their cars were running out of life. By the end of filming, only one Trans Am was still working, and just barely. The others had been used for parts to keep the last one moving. Even the Le Mans police cruiser chasing the Bandit was falling apart. In one scene, it had a black rear fender. In the next, it was bronze again. The cars were so damaged the movie started showing mistakes without meaning to. If you watch closely, You'll also see that the police car crashes in one scene, but looks fine in the next. That's because they kept reusing pieces and swapping parts. They were just trying to get through the film with the few pieces they had left. No one watching the movie knew the risks. But now you do. That one leap almost ended the journey for the Bandit's Trans Am right then and there. Number 5. Factory-installed CB Radio. In Smokey and the Bandit, there's one thing the Bandit and his partner, Snowman, couldn't live without. It wasn't speed. It wasn't power. It was something small, hidden, and powerful. A CB radio. That's right. The Bandit's greatest tool wasn't under the hood. It was right inside the car, tucked near the console. It was the CB, or Citizens Band Radio. And here's the shocking part. In the real world, Pontiac actually offered a CB radio as a factory option. You could order it right from the dealership. No extra installs are needed. Back in the 1970s, CB radios were a big deal. Truckers used them to talk across highways, share traffic tips, and warn about police speed traps. It was like texting, but through speakers. By the time Smokey and the Bandit came out in 1977, the CB craze was already spreading fast. But after the movie, it exploded. In the film, Bandit talks to Cletus, also known as Snowman, through the CB the whole way. That's how they plan their moves, dodge the police, and make it back on time with the truck full of beer. At one point, Bandit even gives Carrie the nickname Frog for the radio, because she's always jumping around. The CB became a key part of the movie's charm, and a must-have for fans who wanted to copy the Bandit's style. But most people don't know the truth. Pontiac was already ready. They saw the CB craze coming and they made it part of the car. Pontiac offered an official CB radio setup right from the factory. It wasn't just a bolt-on gadget. It was clean, sleek, and made to fit inside the car. The CB was often installed at the front of the center console. It looked like it belonged there. Drivers could just pick up the mic and talk. No need for wires all over the place. Some of these CB units were pretty advanced for the time. Other car makers like Cadillac were also in the game. Cadillac even offered a combo radio that had AM, FM, and CB, all in one unit with a proper handset too. But Pontiac's setup was simpler and cooler. It fit the muscle car vibe, and it made the Trans Am feel like a real communication tool. And it wasn't just for show. In real life, these factory-installed CBs worked just like the ones truckers used. Drivers could listen in on Channel 19, warn each other about Smokies, code word for police, and even join fun conversations with strangers on the road. Many experts believe the Bandit's CB radio was either dealer-installed or a factory option. Some say it might have been added later, but others believe the car rolled off the lot with it already in place. Either way, the CB was part of what made the Trans Am so unforgettable in the movie. The popularity of CB radios didn't last forever. After the early 1980s, they slowly faded away. Mobile phones started taking over and the CB craze became a memory. But for a few golden years, the CB was king. And Pontiac made sure the Trans Am had one ready to go. Even in the later Bandit movies, the CB kept showing up. It was too iconic to leave behind. By then, though, most people knew it was a piece of movie history. And those lucky enough to own a real 1977 Trans Am with a factory CB, they had something special. Not many cars from the 70s came with a two-way radio built right in, and not many could claim they helped start a nationwide trend. But the Trans Am did both. It looked like a rebel on the outside, and it talked like one on the inside. Number 6, the Trans Am doesn't sound like it should. When you watch Smokey and the Bandit, every time the Bandit hits the gas, the engine roars like a wild beast. But here's the shocking secret. That roar didn't come from the Trans Am at all. In fact, the sound you hear in the movie wasn't even from a Pontiac. The filmmakers used a completely different car, a 1955 Chevrolet hardtop. Yes, a car more than 20 years older gave the Bandit his voice. That deep, thundering V8 sound, it came from a hot rod, not the stylish black Trans Am on screen. Let's rewind a bit. Making a movie isn't just about filming scenes. After shooting, the team adds sounds like engine revs, squealing tires, and even voices in a quiet studio. It's called sound editing, and it helps remove unwanted background noise and make everything sound just right. Now here's the real reason they needed that old Chevy's growl. The 1977 Pontiac Trans Am, while still powerful, didn't scream like the earlier muscle cars from the early 1970s. By the late 70s, Strict government rules forced car makers to lower emissions and improve gas mileage. That meant smaller exhaust systems, mufflers, and more restrictions. These changes gave the Trans Am a smoother, quieter tone. But don't be fooled. This doesn't mean the 1977 Trans Am was weak. In fact, it was still known for its big V8 engine, especially the W72 400 version, which delivered a deep, rumbling sound many fans loved. The car's shaker hood scoop and bold styling made it feel every bit like a muscle car. It didn't have a low roar, but compared to the fire-breathing monsters of earlier years, its sound was more refined and less aggressive. Still, for Hollywood, that wasn't dramatic enough. So, they gave the Bandit a voice from the past, a roaring Chevy that made every chase scene feel even faster, louder, and wilder than real life. That's the magic of the movies. Number 7, Reynoldss' 1977 Trans Am recently sold. Burt Reynolds didn't just drive the famous black and gold Pontiac Trans Am in the movie Smokey and the Bandit. He actually owned one in real life, and it came straight from Pontiac as a thank you gift. Reynolds kept the car at his home, Reynoldss Ranch in Jupiter, Florida. It stayed with him for many years until his death in the year 2018. But the car's story didn't end there. Reynolds had a friend named Gene Kennedy. Gene said Burt wanted him to have the car and show it off to fans. So for a while, that's what he did. But then, in the year 2022, the car went up for sale at the famous Barrett-Jackson auction. What happened next surprised everyone. This Trans Am wasn't just old, it was fully restored. Back in the year 2015, it had been carefully repaired and brought back to its original condition. So, when the auction started, collectors and fans were ready to spend big. The final bid came in. $495,000. Yes, nearly $500,000 for a single car. That made it the highest price ever paid for a 1977 Trans Am, connected directly to Burt Reynolds. No other Trans Am, no matter how shiny or clean, could match the value of this one. But believe it or not, there's more to the story. In another sale, a different 1977 Pontiac Trans Am Special Edition also brought in a sky-high number. This one sold for $440,000 at a Mecum auction in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And this car wasn't even in a movie. So why did it sell for so much? That Trans Am was used by Pontiac as a show car. It traveled around the country to promote the Trans Am after the movie came out. But while it was on tour in North Carolina, something went wrong. The car got damaged and was given away to a local school, where students learned how to fix it. After the repairs, the car ended up with a collector. Years later, it changed hands again and was cleaned up once more in the year 1997. But here's the real shocker. This Trans Am only had 14 miles on the odometer. 14 miles. That's it. That means nobody really drove it. It stayed in near-perfect condition, as if it had frozen in time. Experts at Hagerty said a 1977 Trans Am in show car condition should be worth about 1/3 of that price. But this one still sold for more than $400,000. Collectors were chasing history, not just horsepower. These sales proved that the 1977 Trans Am, especially ones with a real story, could be worth more than anyone imagined. And Reynolds' personal car? That wasn't just a vehicle, it was a legend on wheels. Number 8, 1977. Pontiac Trans Am had engines built by Chevrolet, Oldsmobile, and Buick. Most people think the 1977 Pontiac Trans Am only had one kind of engine, the kind built by Pontiac. But here's the big surprise. Some of those powerful Firebirds were hiding engines built by other companies. Yes, the Trans Am actually ran with motors made by Chevrolet, Oldsmobile, and even Buick. Let's start with how that happened. Back in the 1970s, General Motors owned many car brands, including Pontiac, Chevrolet, Oldsmobile, and Buick. So, when a car needed a motor, GM sometimes just grabbed one from a different brand. This was faster, cheaper, and helped meet government rules about fuel and pollution. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. In 1977, some Trans Ams came with an Oldsmobile 403 cubic inch V8 engine. That engine made 185 horsepower. It was not built by Pontiac at all. It was built by Oldsmobile. Why? Because this engine worked better in places with high altitudes, like Colorado, and it also met the tougher rules in California. So, if someone bought a Trans Am in those areas,